That's where I would like to be. I would like to see us help hundreds of practices. It would be the icing on the cake for my career.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. This podcast is about how to find a career path where you thrive. While there will always be some aspects of work that we may not love, the less we have to do of that work, the more space we have to do that gives us energy. Most of us do not get energy from spending hours on medical records or doing 20 follow-up calls where the pet parent doesn't answer. So how do we still give pet parents the ultimate experience and still finish our records on time, actually leave work when the shift ends, and have a little more breathing room throughout the day? Well, I had past guest Kelly Cronin reach out wanting to share a new update in her career journey that is part of bringing this reality to VetMed. And no, it's not artificial intelligence, but we do bring up AI in the conversation. We are going to share the story of Teem, Teem, a company bringing virtual assistants into our field. I was really interested in the story of Teem's founder, Cory Pinegar, a rising health business expert who has had a very interesting career path himself. We were not able to arrange schedules to record all together, but he recorded his journey for us, and he does a great job explaining how he met veterinary medicine. After that, I will talk with Kelly Cronin, who brings over 30 years of veterinary medicine experience into her role at Teem. And she will share her perspective of how to ease stress and make the work you love more sustainable. And please make sure to check out Kelly's previous episode of her full career journey because it's super empowering and helpful for anyone in vet med, but especially veterinary technicians. So let's talk about some intriguing solutions coming to our profession: veterinary virtual assistants with Cory Pinegar and Kelly Cronin.
Hey, everybody. My name's Cory Pinegar, and I am our founder here at Teem. I have quite a unconventional story on how I got into staffing within, veterinary care. I was going to Brigham Young University years ago, back in 2015 and 2016. And I, as many of you have probably, bumped into over the years, got the opportunity to work for a small startup at the time, which was Weave. And Weave today, as many of you know, has become a publicly traded behemoth within healthcare. And in I was like late November, early December of 2016, I was working directly with and for the founders. And I got a call one day. I was aware that we desperately needed to cut our monthly burn. And Brandon and Jared proposed the idea of purchasing an arm of the company called Recall Solutions at the time for $1. And I think I always had the entrepreneurial blood within my bones, but I was heading the traditional route at the time. And I called my dad with the opportunity to buy this small division within Weave for $1. And I pitched him on the idea, and he was like, "Cory, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard of." And as many of us know, that can serve as fuel to growing. And I eventually, because of my dad's opposition, and not in a bad way, I deeply respected him, but opposition to the idea, ended up purchasing the business for $1. And over the next, few years, rapidly grew that within the dental market. And we had about 300 people in our Utah office leading into COVID. COVID happened, and it, as all of us know, costs within America just ballooned. And it felt like every day we were having to raise prices or raise wages, and we could just not retain really good people within our call center. And at that time, we primarily focused on scheduling re-care and reactivation appointments for dental practices and also answering overflow phone calls. And so someone within our executive team at that time made the suggestion of, hey, what if we hired a few people in Latin America? And up until that point, I had not even worked with anyone internationally. My only, interactions of any way was when I had called Wells Fargo or Visa and gotten horrendous service overseas. So I had a bad idea of what I thought, international talent could be. ultimately, if you keep doing, as many of us here, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result, that's insanity. And we were losing money. We were unable to get and keep great talent. So we had to try to do something different. And so ultimately, even to my own want against it, had to give the international staffing a shot. We hired two unbelievable individuals. One is Daniel, one is Vinicius, one is out of Argentina, and the other is out of Brazil. Those two individuals and the remainder of people that we hired over the years truly transformed my view of international talent. They are some of the best, hardest working, most engaged individuals you could possibly find. Like they truly are intelligent and hardworking, and it allowed our business to succeed because it was a fraction of the cost. And so why was Teem invented? Within healthcare practices, we all face those same challenges. Hiring people, keeping people, and running profitable practices. And so our goal is to help you find amazing talent wherever it be across the globe, to help you in that customer service world, to help you in the scribing world, and to allow your team, which we know are commonly overworked, have an amazing support system behind the scenes while also delivering a profitable practice, not for the point of being rich and wealthy, but running a practice that is not stressed against itself. And that rising floor of costs that we continue to see in the United States is not stopping. I think a lot of us thought the boom that we saw late in COVID and quickly after was going to plateau, and it may be slightly less aggressive today, but it still exists. And so our goal at Teem is to provide peace of mind for practitioners, support team members, and give amazing people around the globe a great opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Cory. And now to our conversation with Kelly.
Welcome back to the Vet Life Reimagined podcast, Kelly. I'm excited to have you back. I like to prepare before these episodes, and so I re-listened to your previous episode. It was just a great reminder of how much value you're able to share, and I love that I can kind of pick back up on your career journey because you are into something new, which we're going to talk
Cool.
about a little bit today. So, feel free if you want to give a little bit of a
reintroduction.
reintroduction. But I am fascinated by what you saw in the company Teem and why you decided not only is this cool, I want to be a part of this. So feel free to bring us back up to speed.
So where I have been in multi-site management for the last 15 or so years, give or take a few years in there. And I will tell you that it gets a little wearing. There's just so many things going on in veterinary medicine that make multi-site management just a little bit more difficult than what it has been in the past. And just to give you a little background on me, I've been doing vet med for about 30 years. I started as a volunteer, became a technician, got my MBA when I realized that I needed to move into management and that didn't know anything about management, and have done multi-site management since then for various different companies. And I've really enjoyed it and I've loved it so much, but there are just a lot of things that get in the way of that. And I had the opportunity most recently to be part of a group, a smaller startup group that really utilized virtual assistants. And during that time frame, I actually got to meet our founder, Cory. Cory is just one of the most innovative humans that I maybe have ever met. Just really, really driven and really people oriented. So really created this company to both help veterinary medicine, but also to help the people that we employ as well. And so it's really incredible to see something that works out so well on both sides. But how I got conjoined to Teem is that I had been doing a little bit of consulting work for a couple different phone companies, AI phone companies that were really doing some big changes in veterinary medicine. And I got introduced to Cory. During that introduction, I really got to see how utilizing veterinary assistants in various different ways was possible and how much it could really take some of the stress off the team themselves, certainly off the doctors, we started to see a lot of retention issues with veterinarians, and having scribes certainly helps with that. We saw a lot of retention issues with our CSRs. I don't know about you, but I have seen CSRs go around as fast as, one of those rotating doors in terms of just not being able to stay in the profession very long because they don't get a break. They're constantly on the phone. They're constantly in front of clients, all of these things. And so, yeah, I just really saw an opportunity to branch out from multi-site management, to dip a toe in the world of representation for veterinary businesses. And Teem was the one that I really, really enjoyed being part of, just because of the fact that it really answers so many questions for us.
Yeah. And I want to get into those questions, but just reiterating, I'm a person who loves bringing in different perspectives into our profession, like Cory, who, while his background isn't veterinary medicine, his background is entrepreneurship, and he's been in the healthcare from very, very beginnings of his entrepreneurship journey. And so all the things that he can learn, he can bring, but then you're able, like you said, to bring the veterinary perspective. And while we can learn a lot from other industries, there's also some things that are just nice and quirky to us. And so it's good to have somebody who can represent that and has lived it, so that you really do know what works and can be the right solution for our challenges that we deal with. And so let's talk about virtual assistants. To me, that is like, I've heard of virtual assistants. I don't know how common maybe that is. Do you mind describing a little bit about maybe how virtual assistants came to be, and maybe where they started, and how you're starting to see them work so well into the healthcare space?
I think that they've really started on human medicine significantly more so than anywhere in veterinary medicine. And I think we see that with a lot of things. Like, I think we were late adopters to AI. I think we were late adopters to a lot of these different softwares that really help us manage our practices. And so I think one of the things to think about is, in Teem, at least, we actually have 550 ophthalmology practices. So it's not a new company. It's not a new thought process. And it's certainly not a small company in terms of overall market share or representation in the market. We're a little bit newer to the veterinary side of things, which is an incredible opportunity, because actually all of the veterinary assisting companies are pretty new to the veterinary side. There's not one that has been around for a very long time. So I think it's a really good opportunity to educate the veterinary field as to how to do this. And what I'll say is that I hadn't really had an opportunity to see how it worked until I went to a specialist. I went to an electrophysiotherapist. I'm sure I said that wrong. And during that appointment, she actually had a virtual assistant on the screen during that whole time frame. And I was able to watch this person take notes about the whole thing, take in any type of differential diagnosis. She gave her entire SOAP. She gave her next treatment plan, and the woman on the other side of the screen started to work with the different referrals that she had given me within the hospital. Now, she gave me 6 referrals, which was terrible, but also amazing, because by the time I left that appointment, all 6 of those referrals had called me to make the next appointment, because that was happening during the time frame that my doctor was actually doing my exam. That's pretty impactful. And now I think about how that can apply to veterinary medicine, and I had the supreme opportunity to see this in action, in exam rooms, in an emergency and specialty hospital, and really watching those team members able to take all of the medical notes, start the discharge instructions, start the estimate, start any kind of referral letters that might be going with the appointment. It's just really incredible to see those doctors actually leave the practice on time instead of 3 hours late. And I will say that I'm starting to now see through some of our clients, one of which was a mixed animal mobile practice, partially mobile practice, how they're actually utilizing that team member to take notes while they're on the road, how they're actually utilizing that team member to find lab results while they're on the road, how they're utilizing that person to set appointments while they're on the road. It's so incredibly impactful, especially for a smaller practice or a larger practice where we have so many vets in there that could use this person or people.
Yeah. Lots of thoughts are coming to my mind, or questions. And so, I mean, to me, I'm kind of visualizing this live Siri in a way. I can travel with you, but this is like a real human being. And you
Correct.
mentioned AI, and you mentioned AI scribing, and that is probably one of the biggest things that has taken off so far in veterinary medicine when it comes to more advanced technology and AI. Although you say that you've also witnessed that there's still a lot of opportunity for people to utilize AI scribing.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of things. We've talked about AI, we've talked about these real human beings, they're just virtual. And then also some of the things that you talked about might be something that a veterinary assistant or even a technician might be doing too. So there's
Correct.
these three different things that, potentially could have overlap. So I'm trying to think, having these people say, well, one, am I going to worry about my job being taken away? Right.
Yes.
So for these CSRs and veterinary assistants and things that might be doing some of these overlapping jobs, I'm sure that's a thought maybe that comes up. What is the benefit of a real human being and what they can do over a artificial intelligent, an AI computer scribe? Do you mind sharing a little bit of I know I just threw several questions at you, but do you mind covering some of those?
I think the first thing that I want to delve into is this going to take away my job? And I think that there was a really phenomenal video that I watched not so long ago of a veterinary technician asking Siri to place their catheter. And it was incredibly funny. And shout out to whomever made that. I wish I could recall it off the top of my head. But the reality is that you're not going to replace real people. But when you look at a lot of these practices, the real people are tired. There's too much going on. There's too much to focus on good quality patient care and to focus on good client care. And so if you think about a CSR team and you think about the fact that every couple minutes they're picking up a phone, and unfortunately that takes them away from being able to give Miss Jones the attention that she deserves, Miss Jones is getting annoyed. And here you've done all of the best medicine that you possibly could. You have, taken care of her pet to the nines, but all that Miss Jones sees is the fact that it took an extra 15 minutes to check her out because they're getting phone calls that might not even have anything to do with the practice. And I will say that there's so many opportunities for those CSRs who are on site to be able to give attention where it's really going to make a practice impact, where it's really going to actually operationally flow better. And then the other thing with that is that we see so many times where our technicians are not teching because they're doing things like client callbacks. And let's face it, if you're doing 30 client callbacks, 20 of those are going to be everything's going great. Thanks so much for your care of Fluffy. Those 10 that are not can be something that is screened for and then given to the technician so that our technicians are doing technical skills that they were trained to. We talk a lot about how to utilize everyone to the top of their license. That is a really, really impactful thing if we can take some of the admin tasks that are ridiculous and can be done elsewhere off the table. Now, the other thing you mentioned is AI. And here's the thing. I am a huge fan of working smarter, not harder. So I am a big fan of saying that we shouldn't take AI off the table. But I am absolutely certain that a lot of folks who are listening to this podcast have had AI or a transcription come out with things included that maybe are not factual or are funny as all get out or are just not typed correctly. I don't know about you guys, but I use voice to text constantly, and my voice to text has never figured out what a pi metra is. Like, will not get there ever. And so I think that the idea of having a human overlook those things is a really, really impactful thing. And if you're using AI, if it's an AI phone system, that's 5-10 minutes that you're on a phone call, that your scribe maybe is not maybe that scribe is doing, 20 other things, getting someone ready for a referral or getting a medication refilled or, sending a refill to a printer or doing a number of different things, and can come back, listen to that phone call, make sure that the transcription was appropriate and put it into the client medical record. Or if you're transcribing a full patient record, that's 20 minutes that scribe is maybe not listening to you, but they can take that 5 minutes at the end and save you time overlooking that transcript and then putting it into the medical record. And I will say that there's a lot of transcription AI services that are not integrated to the PIMS yet. And so there's an opportunity there to just make sure that everything is formatted correctly and drop it in. And that's a real person who's usually doing something like that.
Yeah, I definitely see that opportunity to leverage both hand in hand. And it would make me feel so much better that I knew a human who also was there, could glance through it just to make sure that everything looked good. Still, of course, veterinary needs to go back over it. But again, this is medicine. Having double, triple checking, I think is really advantageous, especially because the AI just does miss a lot. As wonderful and as good as it is, and I think it continues to get better. Yeah, there's still a human element that's really important because it's a high risk situation when it's medicine. And so I think, again, just knowing that you had somebody looking at it in addition, I think is mentally helpful as well. Because
That's
even when we're being efficient, a lot of us may still have that fear in the back of our mind, which occupies brain and emotional space, and we don't need that. So I think that's helpful.
when I think back to, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows one of these doctors, and doctors, I love you all. I love you all. But honestly, everyone knows that one doctor who is so concerned about how great their medical records are that they get so entrenched in it that they have 20 unfinished records. And if you're thinking about it, 1 week later, do you remember which golden doodle ate the sock? Which one had the ear infection? Absolutely not, right? So if we're thinking about accuracy, if we're thinking about legal protection, having medical records done at the time of the visit and having accurate information go in, while it's still relevant, while you're still thinking about it, and potentially before that dog represents at an emergency clinic or whatever happens, before the disastrous hit, that's a really impactful thing to be able to get ahead of that. And beyond that, how great medical records are you going to do if you're burnt out and sick of typing? And frankly, I don't know about you, but I didn't go to school for typing. Like I'm a pretty slow, methodical typer. And so I love the fact that we can lean on these virtual assistants and AI in order to make sure that we're medically relevant and remembering things appropriately.
So you mentioned that the AI still can't get pyometra right. So I'm curious about the human beings that we're talking about, these virtual assistants. Do they have veterinary background? Like, who are they? And do you get the same one each time? Or do they like start to understand the practice? Like, how do you go about finding the individuals and integrating them into the individual practice?
You have all of the great questions. I love. Well, the way that we actually find veterinary virtual assistants is we actually go back to the practice and ask them their needs. And we have about 3,000 to 10,000 people apply every single month. And the reason that they are so prevalent is because of the fact that we source in South America. And so of these South American countries, when we are paying, we're paying in the top 20% of the bracket, and we're still doing that very affordably to the veterinary practice. Our plans start at about $11.50 an hour, which I think is pretty affordable for practices. Now, you get all of the protections of, because we come from the human side, you get all the protections of having a team member that's really been vetted for HIPAA and everything else that you can imagine. And we have the technological safety of having a protected desktop that is virtual and that kind of thing. So we have all the protections in place. We have the top-notch people, and they're U.S. educated. So we actually partner with U.S. programs that are happening in these South American countries in order to make sure that we've got college educated, really, really smart people coming into this role. But then we also do this really phenomenal thing. We have a success manager who actually gets on a welcome call with each of our new practices and asks them, hey, what are the most important things that you need in order to make this a successful match? And I think, as you can imagine, of the 3,000 to 10,000 people who apply each month, there are plenty who have veterinary knowledge, who have medical knowledge. It really can be tailored exactly to what people need. I had a recent one that was actually an Australian veterinary practice, and they were really looking for someone with not too much veterinary knowledge because they wanted someone who didn't take it upon themselves to say, oh, it ate 3 pieces of chocolate, don't come in. They wanted to make sure that those types of questions really resulted in a technician getting on the phone. They didn't want anyone to take it too far, but they really needed that client service to be top notch. And so that's what they asked for. And that is the team member that they're getting paired with. And I will say that, there is a customization, right? As soon as we have the candidates picked out and we source down to 4 candidates, I just spoke with a practice a couple days ago, Sage, that actually said, if we could have hired all 4 of our candidates, we would have done it in a heartbeat. But we really got an amazing human out of Jose. And I was like, that's amazing. That's incredible. And so I really want to make sure that it's very customized to the practice. And we have success managers that make sure that the practice is happy, that the team member is happy, and helps really connect those two in a really good way.
Yeah. Well, and I feel bad. I forgot to really ask you, what is your role with, I mean, I know you said that you kind of represent the veterinary industry and perspective,
Right.
but what does your day-to-day look like? Are you part of the match process, or what is your role right now with Teem?
I get to do a little bit of the match process just in terms of really starting the welcome call with our success managers. But my role is really to find and educate practices that need the help. So my role is to, as much as possible, get out at the different conferences, get out in terms of, continuing education, speak to all of these practices that have interest in Teem and interest in exploring having a veterinary virtual assistant, and really to make sure that I'm representing what Teem can do for a practice appropriately. So effectively, I am the one who's veterinary matchmaking the practice to Teem.
Gotcha. So higher up in the stream. Well, and you had mentioned, I think it's because of who I surround myself with and all the things that I read. And I was like, oh, everybody must have an AI scribe now. And you're like, maybe not. And so as you, have taken on this new role and you've been in role maybe a couple of months, what are you starting to learn? It's always wonderful to be placed in a slightly different perspective. What are you starting to learn about veterinary practices and, just like, what are you noticing being in this position?
I think the biggest problem in veterinary medicine is that we work harder, not smarter. We all have an incredible work ethic. And I love that about that. It's like the clinician that wants to do such perfect medical records that they never quite get them done, right? And so when I'm thinking about how do I work smarter, not harder, one of the things that I like to think about is what is my ROI? ROI meaning return on investment. And I think it's very, very easy to say, gosh, I just don't know if we're, ready to make that extra spend, or I don't know if we're at a point where, we can really spend the time to train this person, or, it's just always about, hey, I just don't know if we're there yet. And the reality is that when we're thinking about this, spending that extra little bit of time to train someone for the first month that they're with you, or the first couple weeks that they're with you, in order to save that time down the road, is so incredibly impactful. Spending that extra, $11.50 an hour if you're getting a full-time person, in order to save 4 or 5 hours, veterinary hours, right? Hours that are significantly more expensive if we're paying our veterinarians appropriately. it's just a really tough sell to say, hey, this vet should be spending this extra time every night after work is done in order to finish those records. And I would say too that we're not thinking far enough ahead, right? I think one of the things that you can see when you see someone come in with either a scribing AI system and or a true scribe and or someone to answer the phones is that you have less missed calls. We know in veterinary medicine, it's right around that 30% mark of those calls get missed. And what are those opportunities that we're maybe missing? Having callbacks in order to make sure that we're seeing people for rechecks as they need to be, having a scribe so that we make sure that we don't lose a veterinarian to something more attractive like photography, something a little bit less time consuming. I don't know. We just don't work very value forward. And there's so many opportunities for us to see additional patients. We know that we're able to see about 1.5 times the number of patients if we don't have to write the records quite as extensively or spend as much time on records. We know that statistically, emergency veterinarians start to see less patients towards the latter half of their shift. And so if that last fourth of their shift is not consumed or all consumed with them writing referral reports and writing discharge instructions and things like that, that's an opportunity to see additional patients and not to have to slow down in order to have that quality of life and be able to go home. That was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, I think that is a very valid point. I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed in what we're doing day to day that it's hard to stop and think about what's worth investing in a little bit now to make future life so much better. And I mean, I would love to have someone who, I think I mentioned this to you before, is I would love to have someone like follow me around and do my to-do list for me. And like you talked about the referrals, my husband has just gone through a terrible snafu with missed referrals and like miscommunications. And, I think one of the key things with clients is communication. And if you have that additional support that can really keep things organized and everybody doing what they do best, not only are you being more efficient, better patient care, better mental health, like it all starts to kind of build on top of each other. So, I mean, these are all exciting. And so I want to make sure that we've hit on all of them because I think there were 3 categories that Teem can really help with in the veterinary clinic. I think we talked about the CSR. So we talked about phone systems. So the CSR can really be a true representative for the people in clinic and can make sure that, they're taking care of people there. But we've also talked about the scribing aspect of things. But then I think there was a 3rd category that was, I think, like marketing and social media too. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are really blessed to have a really wide variety of folks who have actually applied. So of those thousands and thousands of applicants, we get folks with HR backgrounds, with marketing backgrounds, with social media backgrounds, with admin background. We have had kind of all of the above actually apply. And so we've had some interest from different clinics that just say, hey, I don't have time to do social media. We really need some social media help. We need someone to post up and to manage our daily posting on these 2 or these 3 social media platforms. And honestly, there are opportunities to mix all of the above. So it's definitely one of those situations where you're going to get the most specialized help from a singular person if you really think in terms of, hey, I really need this first and foremost. But we do have a fair number of team members who really do it all. We have one veterinarian who actually used a team member to start up a brand new startup clinic with her, and that person did everything. I mean, you cannot even imagine the number of things. She was doing medication refills, she was doing lab referrals, she was making templates, she was creating estimates, she was setting up the PIM system. I think she even mentioned that she did some of the business license applications. Like this is an all-in-one encompassing type of helpmate that you can really, lead on or lend near to. And I think that there's opportunities to really utilize them in so many ways. And it's just one of those situations where I want to make sure that we know upfront really what we're looking for, because we can really target the person that you really need. And honestly, I don't know about you, but have you been in a hiring situation where you're maybe hiring for a CSR role and you get one or two people who maybe could fit the bill, and the rest of the applicants are folks that have either no experience or no work history or spelling mistakes on their resume? It's just incredible. And then when I look at the quality of applicants that come through, they're stellar, they're college educated, they really want this job, they really have hard work ethics, they are really aimed at exactly what they want to do, and this is a premium job for them. This is something that they really strive for.
Yeah. Well, being on the entrepreneur side of things, virtual assistants have been like a big thing. Everyone's like, oh, you need to get help because never are you successful by yourself. You always have to get help. So virtual assistants have been a big, thing that people have encouraged to start utilizing. So whatever you're weakest at and really need to leverage your business, you can get virtual assistants. Well, one of the challenges with that, and at least in that environment that I've seen, is knowing where to trust to get your virtual assistant. It's like some of these platforms, you're like, do I trust? Because like some of the things you're asking them to do, like even that you've mentioned, those are like big deal kind of tasks. And so being able to have an organization, especially ones that hire people like yourself who again know the veterinary industry, can really again do that matchmaking on both sides. It takes out a lot of that burden too when you're trying to figure out how to hire. At least that's what's coming up for me is like, oh wow, I'm not in clinic, but I may talk to you later because love a
Well, what
virtual.
is it first?
So, just again, kind of taking that barrier out, we can come up with so many barriers, right, to move
Yes.
forward, I think sometimes. And so, that's just one that came to my mind that I can easily see. Oh, it's so nice I can trust you to help me really find the right person that I need. Yeah.
I think the fact that we're US based as a company, the fact that we have college graduates, the fact that we have such a vetting process, the fact that we have the HIPAA requirements in place for our human side, the fact that we have the IT requirements that we do, and just the fact that we have so many people to choose from that really allows us to go for creme de la creme. Plus, what I'll also tell you is that sometimes when you're thinking in terms of virtual assistants, the knowledge of English is potentially not quite as good, or there's just some barriers in terms of what kind of quality of team member are you going to get. And I think that we are really able to make sure that all of those things are very, very well met. And I think that honestly, it's a little bit tough, if you're going with a different virtual assistant, some of the fly by night ones that you find online. I had a hard time personally, and I know that we are both entrepreneurs, and I will tell you that having brought one in, I was very hesitant to give her additional tasks because of the fact that I was just very worried about giving her all of my passwords and all of my information. And, she would have then access to some of my credit card needs and things like that. And what I'll say about having a US based firm, especially one where it's really tangible, right? I know Cory, I know myself, I know the folks that are with us. It is an incredibly calming thing to make sure that I have that touch point of a success manager, of Cory, of myself, of team that stands behind everything, instead of someone nameless, baseless on Fiverr providing that type of support. And the other thing that I ran into early in my entrepreneurial career was really the fact that I would just get to the point where I had this person fully trained and they were fly by night. They would just disappear. And it's heartbreaking because you now have someone that you trust, that you've already trained on maybe your social media posts or answering a call or whatever that looks like. And now you have to start over. Whereas with Teem, our average lifespan of one of our team members is a couple of years instead of, the 6 or 7 months that I might get out of a fiber person.
Well, and because you're also working with that individual, there might be some more opportunities for more written SOPs, like the documentation of these things. So, because I think sometimes that's the hard part too. Again, remember all those barriers that keep coming up in our head when we try to get things. It's just like writing out those types of things. So maybe that's one of the tasks too, just to kind of cover that basis too. But like you can be thinking about those things.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because having talked to, one of our very happy veterinary clients, she, again, I mentioned her a little bit earlier, she utilized her team member to actually help set up her practice, and she's a veterinarian in her own country. So it was very, it was something that she had familiarity coming into it. And part of that conversation is, I know that this team member at some point in time is going to grow out of this role. She's going to finish vet school. She's going to be, building her own practice in her own country. Or, maybe we're going to have enough conversations that I get her to move to the US and we build the practice here. Something along those lines. At some point in time, she's going to grow out of this role. There's nothing on the horizon, but part of what I want to make sure of is that she's going to be training that next person in, and she's going to be creating those paradigms so that everything runs as smoothly as we're going forward. And I think that that's really impactful, to be able to put together some of those things so that you can make sure that it's done right and it's done the same way every time, and that you're not spending the hours upon hours writing the SOPs to do it.
Because that does not sound fun. No.
There are people who get enjoyment out of that. I am not one of them.
Neither I. But you talked about growth, so that actually does go well into my next thought and in my next question. And that was, I know you are a very forward-thinking person. You are big on personal growth and development. So again, kind of a 2-for-1 question here. When again, this is new, but as you see your opportunity here in Teem, where do you see it growing? And kind of the same when it comes to looking at the evolution of veterinary medicine, where you think it's going. How do you see the growth of you and your career, as well as Teem kind of matching with veterinary medicine?
I think the biggest thing is just re-educating veterinary medicine so that we start to see this really impact our practices in a positive way. My legacy, I mean, I've had 33 years in veterinary medicine, and let's be entirely honest, like there's not a lot of years left in terms of my overall career. And so one of the biggest things that I would like to do is positive impact on the veterinary medicine as a whole. So if I can create a situation where 100 veterinarians have a better quality of life, stay doing what they enjoy doing, see more patients, make more money, can actually afford to stay in the industry. If I have a situation where 100 veterinary technicians can do more technical skills, can be more science-minded, can really enjoy and go for bigger things like a VTS, or, can really do the things that are impactful for them to stay in the field. And if I can do it at a cost savings so that we have a bigger pot in order to pay our team members, all of our team members, all of our floor team, all of our veterinarians, everyone, our CSRs better for on the floor, that really is, that would be a legacy for me. If I could have a situation where I can somehow impact this industry to do better in terms of wages, in terms of overall prospects, in terms of growth, in terms of skill growth, all of those things would just, that would chuff me to no end. I would be so incredibly happy. So that's where I would like to be. I would like to see this grow. I would like to see us help hundreds of practices. It would be the icing on the cake for my career. The biggest thing that I'd like everyone to get out of this conversation is just really rethinking what it looks like to have a really smooth running, very highly utilized technical team, highly utilized CSC team. I would really just like everyone to think about how to make their day just a tiny bit better. And there's a lot of things that I can't do. Like I cannot stop the anal glands from going everywhere in the room. I can't do it. But if if I can make it so that you don't have to live in those anal gland scrubs for an extra 4 hours at the end of the night, trying to get all of the lab work to actually show up on your, on your medical records, like that sounds amazing. Let's do that.
That was a very good way of putting it. I like that. So if people want to learn more about Teem and some of the potential challenges that they would love to see if you might be able to solve, where's the best place for them to go?
So if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a link that
Okay.
is a direct booking link for me. And the other thing is if you just go to our Teem website, it's hireteam.com. That will take you to a place where you can see how much savings you could potentially have by hiring a team member. That will take you to a place where you can book with me anytime. And if you don't see a time frame that works for you, because let's face it, veterinary medicine is all over the map, please just let me know. I'm super happy to meet on emergency and other time schedules. So anything that I can do to make it just a tiny bit easier for you to practice, I would love to do that.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming and sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It's so incredibly good.